Vanessa's museum was at. So I was there a long time.
I think what you need to do really is look at the building if you haven't been through it before. So let's stop right here. Pretty well, if you can see it, depends where the light's coming from and changes its color.
Or are they just empty?
They're empty skewers. And the joke's on you. They have chicken.
You did a wonderful job. Very nice. You're going to join everyone in 201? I would love it.
Big saltations, where you say, I don't think it's happening, but I think this is a problem where the discussion would have been more linear and more conclusion driven.
Go get yours.
If we and then
This seems like
on the world can rebuild cities and universities, the look, the social space, the feel of the whole world we live in. I think that's the premise, and we want to kick it around today in a conversation about boundaries in education and art and business. We have an extraordinary...
I'm blessed I came in here as president of the university 2 months ago. I walk in here and get to join in this celebration, and I've heard many, many tales, regales about the innovative process, the complicated process, all of the Sturm und Drang that went into the creation of this magnificent building. I can answer it in a general way, which is, change is hard for people. To think in bold new ways, many people take to be somehow disrespectful of the great traditions that have existed. Some people take it to be risk the unknown. Sometimes it's more comfortable for people. One of the most conservative environments on the planet And one of the reasons for that is you have a bunch of city. Most importantly, and most exciting for me, working across the boundary of this university and other great institutions.
The Spanish nationalists were against it, the newspapers were against it, business community was against it, design community was against it. It was a bit of a miracle that it got done. I just wonder, are you so famous now, and is that thing so successful that people roll over when you suggest buildings like this? Or,
some of the greatest works of art and architecture are built because of a benevolent dictator. And so,
a rich benevolent.
and I think we've been interviewed over from time to time at places like this for projects and passed by, and even recently. I can't remember exactly where, but I know we've been rejected. I think if I had just come in that way here without Peter, I wouldn't have thought this building wouldn't be here. So it's simple, you know, and we're doing one at Princeton where I went for 5 interviews over the last 10 years at Princeton and got rejected. And then Peter came in and said, I want it.
He's my boy. You're doing one of them where the city of Cambridge has told you to put height limits on you, right? No?
It's fine. Cambridge was fine.
Are the universities...
We did get interviewed in Cambridge, and that worked. There was a climate there where the president of the university and the board realized that the MIT, this was for MIT, that they were losing students to other universities because of architecture. It was really they could quantify it, they could tell. And so we were selected to make something special happen. And there was a lot of support from the business, from Gates and people like that, to make that happen. So there is a move on, I think, but it's driven by things in the world happening to change.
But Ed Hunter says that universities are fundamentally and maybe incurably conservative places. Do you agree or not?
I just met this guy. I've been with him twice now, and he has not asked me to do a building yet.
I've only thanked him for one.
What about universities as, on this matter of boundary jumping and boundary expansion? I mean, are they part of the problem?
Well, I don't. Peter can maybe talk about it, because at Princeton we're doing a building that's very modern and special, and they're also building a building that's campus Gothic.
Right.
Why?
Peter Lewis, address just the question of...
Here is that I made an important gift, and then I watched it, I started to watch what was going on around it and became dissatisfied. That's a whole different thing. It has really very little to do with boundary jumping. But I would say about the universities. I find it exasperating to sit down with most university professors because they think that making money is evil and anybody who makes it is evil. And I think that is a very liberal bias. But in terms of getting things to happen at universities, I think they are the last bastions of conservatism. And whether these other resistors are in fact right and you are in fact wrong, options issue comes in, letting people be that brave.
These are real issues. Frank, I wonder if you have been through this. And do you live with this awful kind of turmoil that comes with thinking, I like it, but I may be wildly wrong. This may not work, and we're going to spend $50 million on it anyway.
I don't think of it that way. I approach each project with a lot of insecurity, but it's not that kind of insecurity. Because if you've been through the process with me, like these guys have, it's pretty grounded in what the issues they've asked for, the things they want, the things they need to have solved, their budgets, their time constraints. And so I ground the projects from those issues, so that the amount of flamboyance, whatever you want to call it, is a very small percentage. It reads like a big percentage because it's like if you had a dot of ink on the point of your nose. It's small, but everybody would see it. And so it's, you know, it's the room, but this room was asked for as a fan-shaped classroom. That's what was asked for. Now, what I did with it, how I treated it, is, you know, what any other architect would have done. It would have looked slightly different, a lot different, you know. But that's the arena.
I want to go back to Bilbao, which everybody knows about, and probably a lot of us have seen, because it seems to me in a certain way there was tremendous courage in doing it, and a lot of the lessons have not been learned. And I'm speaking maybe from I live in Boston, and we have something like a Bilbao opportunity that nobody wants to take. It's 1,000 acres right on the edge of Boston Harbor, abandoned industrial land, and it could be a Bilbao. Bilbao chose to build a museum, not a bullfighting arena. They chose to build it right smack in the middle of a very small plot in the center of what Spain calls this, or what people call the Cleveland of Spain. And
people don't realize how purposeful this all was. The Basque government wanted to compete with Madrid, Barcelona. They had a industrial city that was failing. The steel industry, the shipping industry was going down.
Sound familiar? Right.
And they needed to do something. I guess because it's a smaller entity, they didn't have, it wasn't sloppy. They could come together with a purpose to do something important. They wanted to compete culturally. They know that Madrid has museums and art and music, and they wanted to compete with facilities. So they built a 30-kilometer subway system. Whoever's heard of a subway system in a tiny little town like that? They hired Norman Foster to do it from England. It's a beautiful little subway system. When it opened, the traffic in the city just mellowed. It was fantastic. They built a concert hall Congress Center. It's not as adventurous architecturally as some of the other things, but it's an important asset that they have. They built they're building a new railroad station that was supposed to be by Jim Sterling, who died. And they built a new airport by Calatrava.
I would say it's the Basques. In this situation, it was the Basques who were risk takers, and there was huge political dissent in the Basque country over this. And there was leaders who figured out this was a good idea and fought it through, and against all odds. But they were the risk takers there, I think. But that is not to take away from the building.
But it flips the meaning of the word conservative, because there were three architects competing for it. Myself, Arati Sasaki, and Viennese Kotamova. The Arata's building was an oval building that we would normally call conservative. And my building was what we would normally call whatever.
And still exist today in the same recognizable form. And they found 66 such institutions. There were two problems.
Boston, yes.
There isn't a lot of innovation and creativity coming out of this city, and there hasn't been for a long time, and that's what I'd like to see change. And I'd like to see the people who do that sort of thing be sought after and honored rather than laughed at and disdained.
You talking politics?
No, I'm talking about people who do things that no one else will do.
Social life, business,
Everything.
sports,
Yes.
media?
Yes.
Name a few. I mean, what's...
culture, everything. I mean, there are people who choose to behave differently, to do differently.
You talking about the symphony?
I'm just talking about change in general and the way change agents are regarded.
People aren't willing to look at what the other guy's enduring, and that we're looking at these social issues from our side of the fence only, without without trying to understand that there are always disadvantaged people. We've been going, we've been fat and sassy, and there's a bunch of people over here that aren't, and they got communicate with all of us. They've seen everything on television, and you're bound to have discontent, and it's bound to engender some kind of irrational behavior because they're cornered. And until we start looking at that politically as a reality, then George Bush is right. I mean, who's making the most weapons of mass destruction? It's not him, us. But that's another story. But I think the same thing obtains in what we're all doing, is to try to. I think that if you go to Hollywood, Hollywood's a bad place to go, but there are a lot of wonderful people that in Hollywood, and you go to the top money makers in Hollywood, to their homes. I won't name them, but they all look alike. They seem to have these big flowered couches with puffy pillows, and they've got a few. There's all the same stuff around, and they don't have very good art mostly, and a lot of flowers on the tables and stuff, and houses look kind of. So they.
You want to name their architects?
It's scary though, because these are people that could make it, could do something, and they, in their own crafts, they understand what we're talking about, but they run backwards. And I can even relate it to myself. For years I just bought Brooks. I'm not advertising Brooks Brothers, but buying clothes is hard for me. I hate it. So I'll go to the quickest place I can get fixed up in the quickest amount of time and get out. And so I'll just take what they got on the shelf. I just don't want to deal with it. It's not something I emotionally or what a sharp mind he still has. And I think he's led, we're not maybe unconscious about what he's done, the revolution that his life has had on all of our worlds.
You want to describe it for those who...
Well, he was reacting to the time that he lived in, which was post-war, coming into a world of paucity. The things were cut back. He took the detritus of society and made art of it. He showed us a way to live with less, richer, not basically richer. And he continued to do that. Continued to take the simplest, dumb stuff and take it to a high level, which is, I think, an incredible lesson. And I think I learned from him. I tried to do that in architecture. It wasn't acceptable in architecture. The corrugated metal and plywood and chain link was people had too much disdain for it. I could do small projects like that, but no.
A program that is to step outside of the envelope. And you have a university president that's saying the only way to innovation is to change the way.
The last soundbite that I have of Frank Gehry talking, he's talking about his favorite artist, who is Robert Rauschenberg. I didn't get Frank Gehry mentioning Robert Rauschenberg's name on tape. But right at the very end of where he's talking, before I cut to the shot of the outside of the building, that's what Frank Gehry is talking about, or who Frank Gehry is talking about. Well, you had to have credentials to be in that event, and thanks to Laura, we were able to get in.
Building just got bombed.